All right. Thank you to everyone who was able to make it today. I'm very excited for my associate, Annie Frye, licensed master's in social work, who's going to be talking on a talk called Walking BPD. Here is Annie Frye.
Thank you so much, Elliot. Hi everyone. Like Elliot just said, my name is Annie and I am a licensed master social worker. Let's get straight to it. Today we're going to dive into the topic of borderline personality disorder, also known as BPD for short. And my focus is how it may affect the children who grow up with a parent with the disorder. Effects may persist into adulthood. In other words, it could be lifelong and may go unnoticed or can be misunderstood unless it is spoken about. So that's exactly what I'll be doing today. Therefore, let's open up the topics hold on one second, let me just change my slide. There we go. Let's open up the topics of development, parenting, intimacy and love, identity confusion, and dependency as it relates to having been reared by a parent who suffers from BPD. And also we'll cover the journey to healing. So, as most of you probably already know, let's, however, take a brief review of what some of the challenges of borderline personality disorder involves. So BPD is diagnosed on the basis of a pervasive pattern of instability of interpersonal relationships, self-image, and affects, and also marked impulsivity beginning by early adulthood seen in a variety of contexts. So let's take a look at some of these contexts. Avoidance of real or imagined abandonment is common. Unstable and intense interpersonal relationships alternating between extremes of idealization and devaluation, unstable self-image or sense of self, impulsivity, recurrent suicidal behavior or gestures or threats, or self-mutilating behaviors, affective instability due to reactivity of mood, emptiness, intense anger or difficulty controlling anger, and lastly, transient stress-related paranoid ideation or severe dissociative symptoms in some cases. So having taken a look at all of this, that's quite a handful for a parent to have to deal with alongside child rearing and parenting, right? It's almost inevitable that the children of a parent with such a diagnosis may come to struggle with certain kinds of issues or confusion themselves. Let's dive into what that may be like to be living with a BPD affected parent during both child and adulthood, and what it may lead to for these children. So at a first glance, some of the following may sound familiar to you if one of your parents suffers from BPD. You may be living with role reversals and being parentified despite being the child. You may experience extreme feelings of emptiness or loneliness. You may have deep fears of abandonment and rejection instilled in you by your parent. Conditional love and unrealistic expectations may be familiar. Control and manipulation. You may have witnessed addictive behaviors, including sex, drugs, alcohol, or other behavioral addictions. Your parent may be in need for constant validation and approval from you or others in the family. The parent may be showing emotional immaturity or an inability to care for herself or himself. Your parent may have a limited understanding of life skills. Your parent may be engaging in impulsivity and make poor choices associated with erratic behavior. Your parent may be engaging in emotional dysregulation, including bouts of rage or tears. You may be living with a feeling of having to walk on eggshells in the home or around your parent or your caregiver. There could be a competition for the wife's or the mother's love and feelings of anger and jealousy. There could be some blaming, rejecting, or verbal, emotional, and or physical abuse of the child or adult child for having their own desires. She could also make herself or himself look like the victim if the child has expectations of them or complaints about them. You may be experiencing your parent having a lack of trust with family or friends, and you may be the target of, or you may witness cycles of idealization and devaluation with those in their life, including yourself. All right. So as you can see, being raised by a parent with BPD can cause several difficulties. While there is a lot of overlap, the main difference in parenting when it comes to mothers and fathers with BPD is that usually the mother will feel an exaggerated dependency on the child, while the father is more likely to feel an exaggerated dependency on the wife or the partner, and might actually come to view the child as competition for the partner's affection. Some of the most common challenges in parenting when a parent suffers from BPD are things like severe narcissism, strong enmeshment, reliance on manipulation and control, anger and blame of the child, role reversal, where the parent needs parenting and being looked after, as well as neglect, abuse, betrayal, and battering. The borderline parent's unstable relationships are directly related to his or her own intolerance of separation and fear of intimacy. The borderline parent is often dependent, clinging, and idealizing until the lover, spouse, friend, or child repels or frustrates these needs in some kind of rejection or indifference, and sometimes that may not even be noticed by the other person. This then can lead the borderline parent to the other extreme, consisting of devaluation, resistance to intimacy, or outright avoidance. This could actually then lead to a feeling of a continual tug of war that may persist between a desire for closeness to relieve the emptiness and boredom, and a fear of intimacy, which may be seen as a thief of self-confidence and independence. So within relationships, these internal feelings are often experienced by the child and others as either intense and or shifting and manipulative connections. Unrealistic demands of others, manipulation, provocative actions, and a lack of true empathy may become daily events for children and adult children of a borderline parent. So let's take a look at two specific problems. Number one, lacking object constancy, which is the ability to understand others as complex human beings, who despite being complex can relate in consistent ways. And number two, a parent who experiences others, including their children, based upon only their latest encounter with them rather than based on a bigger picture. This could lead the children to develop an unstable and enmeshed attachment, as well as confusion as to how to love, how to connect, how to self-identify, and healthily separate and individuate away from their parent. So due to their lack of true empathy and intense self-centeredness in some cases, they may use their child to increase their feelings of power, agency, or control, and they may also be blinded to see the suffering that they may be creating. All right. All right, so having a parent with BPD can show in either of the following categories, as you see on the slide, or as a combination of some of them or all of them. Let's take a look. So first and foremost, we have the severely narcissistic parent. This is someone who's insecure and self-absorbed, having an insatiable need for admiration and a grandiose sense of her or his own importance. Criticism and competition may often be involved, especially when the child begins to thrive. Next, we have a different kind, the overly enmeshed parent. This is someone who smothers the child with demands for time and attention, feeling no boundaries, and insisting on being the most important person in their child's life. Unable to foster her child's healthy independence, and may actually describe the child as a best friend. Next, we have the controlling parent. This is someone who sees the child's role in life to be his or her source of happiness, will threaten severe consequences if the child tries to follow a different agenda from their own. Next, we have the parent who needs parenting. This is often combined with depression or addiction, and the child must therefore care for them. Role reversal may happen while the child itself or himself is starved for guidance and protection. Lastly, we have the parent who neglect, betray, and batter. This is someone who's unable to give any warmth to their child at all, leaving the child vulnerable to abuse by others or even someone who abuses their child themselves. All right, now we're going to move on to Erik Erikson's stages of development. Who knows this theory? It is a widely known theory of development. So let's use this theory and look at it from the perspective of a child growing up with a parent who suffers from borderline personality disorder. And I do want to emphasize and stress that please keep in mind that the following are risks, but they're definitely not guarantees at all. So let's look at the first stage. Let me see. Okay, there we go. All right, so this happens from birth to approximately 18 months of age. During the most important period of a child's life, according to Erikson himself, the child's worldview and overall personality is being shaped. As we know, babies are entirely reliant on their caregiver at this stage of life, and therefore their interaction with the caregiver has a profound effect on the baby's development. Erikson himself believed that if a baby successfully developed trust at this stage, they would feel safe and secure in the world and about themselves. So essentially, the caregiver shapes the child's perception and future relationships. Now, the effect of BPD on children can begin at this earliest stage with a lack of secure attachment and engagement, like I mentioned earlier. Due to the borderline parent's emotional dysregulation and issues with consistent and reliable affection and comfort, things such as insensitivity, high levels of intrusion, and inadequate levels of positive response to the baby's distress may therefore be seen. Unmet psychosocial needs can lead to disorganized attachment and steal away a child's sense of security, comfort, and safety right from the beginning of life. Moving on to stage number 2, happening from 18 months of age to approximately 3 years of age. So at this stage, it's all about developing a greater sense of self-control and figuring out whether one can do things by themselves, or whether they still rely on others for assistance. This can also be seen as a child's first step towards independence. This naturally builds their basic confidence in their own abilities, and it helps them practice critical thinking skills, feel comfortable, develop a greater sense of their identity, make decisions independently, and process their emotions. So what could go wrong at this stage of a child's development is if the parent discourages autonomy by, for example, rejecting the child's ideas, stops the child from making any of their own choices, or if the parent simply loses patience and completes tasks for them. This could lead to feelings of shame or self-doubt, anxiety, avoidant or defensive behavior, or low self-esteem, among other things. This could happen due to simply the parent's own fear of abandonment. At stage 3, occurring from 3 to 5 years of age, children learn that they can exert power over themselves and the world through directing play and other social interactions. They learn that what they can and what they cannot control. It's also during this time that they try to figure out the core questions about themselves, such as, am I good or bad? If supported healthily, this could lead to a development of ambition and direction. However, if a child isn't allowed to experiment with their ability to exert power, or who's often criticized for making mistakes, they may feel more guilt than initiative and learn to resist trying new things due to a fear of failing. A borderline parent who criticizes a lot may also program the child to think that he or she is bad, unworthy, or mean. In other words, external messages can become internalized so that you are bad eventually becomes I am bad. At stage 4, happening in the middle school years, from approximately 6 to 11 years of age, the child develops new skills and may develop a sense of self-worth if completed successfully. However, if they aren't supported in learning new skills, they may come to have a sense of worthlessness, inferiority, or inadequacy. If a parent stops a child from fulfilling their needs in order to focus on fulfilling their own needs, or keeps saying things like, you're not good enough, you can't do anything right, you shouldn't even try, how can you leave me here alone and go spend time with your friend, your duty is to be with me, etc., it isn't too difficult to imagine how this developmental stage could go askew. Stage 5, which are the teenage years, occurring approximately from the ages of 12 to 18. During this stage, adolescent explores their independence and develops a sense of self. The teenager will ask questions such as, "Who am I?" and learns more about their own goals, values, and beliefs. But what if that teenager isn't allowed to express goals, beliefs, or any ideas of their own? There are many ways that this stage can go wrong when being raised by a parent with BPD. Instead of understanding the child as an autonomous person of their own, the parenting may instead be driven by a desire to fulfill his or her own need for validation, security, and love, rather than giving it to the child. So therefore, the child may actually quickly learn that their role is to satisfy the parent's demands, often unrealistic, unstable, and conflicting, and the parent may exert control to try limit the child's autonomy in an effort to avoid abandonment. Back to the same issue of abandonment. It's not uncommon for the child or teenager's identity to become closely tied to the parent's expectations, approval, and rejection, as well as adoration and disgust, and extreme happiness or despair. Without the freedom and support needed to dig into self-exploration and self-expression, it's not surprising, actually, that the adolescent may struggle to establish an authentic sense of self and trust their own instincts. A teenager may also struggle to establish important and meaningful peer and initial romantic relationships of their own. Ultimately, role confusion can result in being unsure of who you are or where you fit in, potentially drifting from job to job or relationship to relationship, or feeling disappointed and confused about your own place in life. Stage 6, from approximately 18 years of age to 40. So as we approach adulthood, the young adult focuses on shaping intimate, loving relationships with others. This relates to romantic partners as well as friendships. Struggling here can lead to loneliness and isolation. There is a real risk that for some, there are some real risks for some adult children of a borderline parent. These types of relationships are typically reciprocal, meaning that both parties share parts of themselves while also listening and supporting each other. So how must a young adult do this if they don't have a clear sense of self and only know how to support others? Also, it can be difficult to trust that another person's love and care is constant, as the young adult may fear rejection or abandonment at any moment. For the final two stages, stage 7 and stage 8, around middle age and older adulthood, these stages will just be mentioned real brief. Around middle age, adults at this stage try to find ways to contribute to the world. Stagnation refers to not finding a way to contribute. Such individuals may feel disconnected, unproductive, uninvited, or uninvolved with the world. The risks are cognitive decline, poorer health, lower quality relationships, and a decreased life satisfaction. And in older adulthood, which is until death, older adults may look back at their lives and reflect upon their life choices. Despair relates to looking back on life with regret, shame, or disappointment. I'm going to ask all of you to take a moment to imagine what this stage could look like for an elderly adult child who, for example, never managed to set healthy boundaries with their parent to live out their true self. Now, this is not to say that every child growing up with a parent suffering from BPD will follow this course of development. This is just to give an idea of how things may or could go askew. Now that we've looked at the potential course of development, let's take a closer look at confusion about love and intimacy, identity, and dependency. All right. So, starting with the confusion of love and intimacy. I want you all to imagine this upcoming scenario. Imagine a child who experiences a certain kind of warmth, genuine appreciation of themselves and their accomplishments, but coming at a very high price of admission. The parent having planted him or herself into the center of the child's world. Thinking that that is what love is, the parent will not release their tight hold of their child without putting up a fight first, once the child is older and communicates their needs as separate to theirs. Holding out promise and praise when the child proves that they have a mind of their own, the parent tries to mold the child by making them feel guilty for not going along with his or her needs and wishes. Seeing normal and healthy separation as a loss and betrayal, they may try to pull the child back in every time the child tries to grow up, pull away, or leave. Manipulating, control, crying, threatening, blaming, taking away what's most important to their child if possible, criticizing, gaslighting, the silent treatment, etc., may very well be some of the conditions a child of a parent with BPD have to deal with while growing up and in adulthood. I hate you. I love you. Don't leave me. I need you and can't do without you. But don't you dare have needs of your own. This sounds tough, right? All right. It's not uncommon for a person who was raised by a borderline parent to struggle with trust issues and vulnerability, therefore making them more likely to pathologize emotional intimacy and love. Let's take a look at some of the consequences. So as you see on the slide, here is a list. One could become sexually promiscuous, confuse attention from someone as interest, chase the perfect partner who can fix them, engage in continuous testing behavior with a partner, constantly having the doubt of, you're going to leave, aren't you? May come to believe that the lack of safety, security, and stability is perfectly normal and may actually come to expect it, as sad as that is. Inability to be alone, may settle for a toxic relationship, may approach all intimate relationships with caution and introversion, may avoid love altogether as it's too painful or shameful to experience, or may struggle to share feelings and opinions. This may not actually be too surprising considering their experiences with parental betrayal and inconsistency. Okay, moving on to identity confusion. Another risk is the unsteady development of one's own sense of self and identity. Sorry. Having gone through childhood, having been punished and shamed for expressing their own needs, feelings, and passions, they may actually have felt confused, ashamed, and unaware of their authentic, genuine self, as well as having felt alone and potentially empty. Let's imagine the child from earlier, now all grown up. It's a likely consequence that they now have to suffer the aftermath with identity confusion. They may not have a clear understanding of their place in the world and may struggle with false beliefs rooted in early programming from the parent about being a bad, thoughtless, selfish, or incompetent person, just to give some examples. It could be also be many other things. You are statements have become I am statements, and the adult child may struggle to move away from the parent's shadow. This may be seen as, for example, saying yes when you actually want to say no, vowing to stand up for yourself but retreating again and again, or feeling unable to find a way to evolve and claim your own life, thereby failing to develop a full and true sense of who you are and what's possible for you. So feeling emotionally lonely may be a consequence. Such adult may also put other people's needs first as the price of admission to a relationship. They may therefore take on the role of helping others, convincing the world and perhaps even themselves that they do not have many emotional needs of their own. However, this may lead to even more loneliness, as keeping your own deepest needs covered up prevents genuine connection with others. A such person may actually have learned not to trust their own instincts to the point where they will accept the relationships that they don't actually want. It may be difficult not to doubt their own complaints, as they may find it difficult to respect and believe their own feelings. Let's move on to dependency. So a parent can't educate their child to navigate life if they, for example, are in bed with a book every afternoon and shuts the door, or if they're sleeping when it's time to get the family ready in the morning. They may not be available for common things such as cooking, childcare, or self-care, just to mention a few. No matter the cause for this, when this parent needs parenting, it's usually, or it's common, usual or common for the child to take on the role of parent, protector, and confidant. A parent who needs parenting often withdraws into their own world, abandoning their role and going MIA. They've simply checked out. Again, messages such as, I depend on you. I can't manage without you. If you love me, you'll do everything for me. If you don't, I'll either wither away or die. These could be messages received by the parent. Pretty difficult to ignore, right? Children who've been forced into this type of role reversal may often be described by others, and I think this is pretty common. We've all, I think, heard of someone with this description as either so grown up, responsible, wise beyond their years, but the truth is actually that they've lost the opportunity for a healthy childhood. Due to all the practice that this child has had, they often grow up to master carrying the burdens and taking on the responsibilities of others. It becomes very natural to them. They're excellent at being the vehicle for other people's survival, success, and happiness. However, when it comes to themselves, they rarely know how to put themselves or their dreams and their own joy at the center of their existence. Now, let's imagine this woman is Susie. So let's imagine that Susie, who is 35 years old, employed full-time, married, and is the mother of 2 young children. Her mother calls Susie 10 to 15 times a day to ask for help. Susie has to, just to give examples, has to drive her to the two doctor's appointments, make weekly meal plans, ensure that the mother goes to the supermarket, remembers to eat, takes her pills, pay her bills, gets out of the apartment daily, etc. All the while she also works and takes care of her own family. That's a lot on Susie's plate. One day, Susie has to stay late at work for a really important presentation that could decide a really big deal that she's been working on for a long time. Susie's mother calls her, crying that she can't get her TV to come back on, and says that Susie's priority should be her mother's well-being. Take a moment to think, what do you think this must be like for Susie? Another issue with dependency can occur when the overly enmeshed parent, who directly or indirectly tells their child, "You are my whole world." These borderline parents have no boundaries or borders when it comes to where they end and where they feel their child begins. This parent looks to their child to fulfill their need for socialization, providing a meaningful identity, and offering vicarious excitement or entertainment. This level of closeness can be experienced as suffocating, invasive, and unilateral. It is required whether you like it or not. If a parent has financial control over the child, even if the child is all grown up, it can create a crippling form of dependency where they keep the adult child from standing on their own 2 feet. What might actually be holding the person back from simply saying enough is enough? It may be because dependency is a two-way street. No matter how old a person may be, he or she may be much younger when assessed emotionally. It is entirely possible that there could be a big disconnect between the competent, effective adult that is observed externally and the scared little boy or girl that lives within him or her, who's still paralyzed with fear about losing, for example, his father's love and not surviving if he pulls away. He may also be feeling insecure about his actual ability to sustain himself or herself and live life without the father. You see, after having lived years and years with this dependency and guilt-tripping behavior from his father, it has come to feel normal for him. And while his rational brain is complaining and is making him feel angry, his emotional side may truly doubt whether he can survive without his parents. Giving in to his father's demands suddenly seems like the only option, or may very quickly seem like it is the only option. Now, finally, how to heal from these wounds. So you may ask yourself, I'm an adult. I should be able to tell my mother I can't go swimming with her without being swamped with guilt. I can easily reschedule activities with friends. So why is it so hard with mom? Why is something so simple seeming so difficult? Let's talk briefly about programming. As a little child, the little boy or girl absorbed every message from their parents, both the good ones and the bad ones. The child may have been programmed with a flawed set of messages that work for the parent but against the self. The you are messages became I am messages and can lead to a variety of false beliefs. Real love isn't something a child should have to buy with good deeds. A child's role is simply to individuate and build their own life, and the parent's role is to help the child do so and provide encouragement along the way. But if the child's beliefs reflect back those of the parent and not a rational truth, they can impact the child's feelings and behaviors throughout life. So as an adult, The person may come to feel inadequate, guilty, flawed, bad, or ashamed for having been unable to fix their parent. Their programming may tell them that they should have been able to do that. This can lead to a lot of painful feelings and perhaps dysfunctional behavior in their own life. Firstly, in order to start the healing process, it's important to bring the adult child's unconscious programming to light. The adult child may read a self-help book or begin therapy. Either alone or in therapy, the child must start separating lies from the truth in order to actively challenge their false beliefs. It may actually bring an enormous feeling of gratification to discover, perhaps for the first time ever, the truth about who they are. So an example could look something like this. The lie would be, I'm selfish, while the truth is, I'm generous, giving, and considerate. Another example could be, the lie would be, I can't do anything right, whereas the truth would be, you're jealous and can't bear when my life is blooming. There are many creative ways for the adult child to process the past, but a popular method is to write letters to the parent and to the self without posting them, to truly voice, without judgment or opposition, how their experiences have affected them, and to contemplate again, perhaps for the very first time, what they want from the relationship with the parent going forward. Finally, being honest with oneself about the injustices that were done, identifying and putting words to one's false beliefs and listening to one's own wants and needs can feel incredibly freeing and empowering for the individual going through the process. It may actually feel like being honest with yourself for the very first time. Common feelings that may surface when you engage in this type of cognitive work are anger and grief. Crying or feeling rage is normal while working through such difficult emotional terrain. It's important to process and to work through these emotions properly. A helpful therapeutic exercise can be to put the fantasy of the good parent to rest once and for all. Symbolically, the person can bury the fantasy of chasing a healthy love from their parent and hoping that it will ever come within reach. A eulogy can even be said to aid in the process. This is in fact a great symbolic way that works on the unconscious and begins to reprogram it. No more if-onlys. Next, the person can also work towards changing their behavior to, for example, break enmeshment by learning to use non-defensive communication and by starting to set boundaries with the help of position statements. This is usually quite challenging, but very important on the journey to healing. Next on the journey to healing is deciding what kind of relationship the child actually wants with their parent going forward. By this stage, the person may have learned to embrace their rights, found ways to protect themselves, and have set boundaries in place. They may also have changed their habitual responses to their parents' behavior. This in itself being a very important point. And then at this point, the child has 4 options for how to go forward. Number 1, the adult child can continue the assertiveness and non-defensive strategies. He or she can negotiate for a better relationship by being very clear and specific about what they do and do not want, and what will be expected of both parties. They could have a tea party relationship, which is very superficial. In other words, you do not tell your parents anything deep about what goes on in your life. You do not share any important details or information. Your tea party relationship, basically you'd be doing small talk. You can talk about the weather and non-important things like this. Or lastly, they can choose to cut out the parent entirely. However, let me stress, if none of the 3 first options work, an adult child has to contemplate the last and very difficult option of cutting contact with a parent completely. This is absolutely the last resort when the person is faced with the choice of their own well-being or their parent, and both together truly really isn't an option. It's important that the person has tried any other option first. If this option is the last one standing, it is a really good idea to seek professional assistance and have the guidance and support of a licensed professional through this very difficult change. This person may really benefit from talking to a therapist who can help navigate difficult emotions, help find strategies for dealing with the reactions of friends and family, because friends and families are usually bound to have a reaction and opinions about it, and figure out what life may look like without the parent in the picture. It is very possible that maintaining, oh, sorry, hold on. There we go. It is very possible that maintaining the new healing may require a continuous effort to avoid falling back into old habits and patterns. However, it is possible for these children to live very fulfilling, happy, and empowered lives as healed individuals. And very lastly, if anyone is further interested in learning more about this topic, here are the references to the resources that I used for this talk. And final thing for me to say is thank you everyone for listening to me. I hope it's been helpful and informative.
Thank you so much, Annie. That was awesome. That was really great. And tune in. We have more talks coming. Go to childbehavioralhealth.com and have a great night. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.